Welcome to the Coach Debbie Potts Show, where high performers learn how to stop guessing and start aging stronger, not slower. Your host is Coach Debbie Potts, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, metabolic health coach, and host of this show. Here, we dive into the why behind fatigue, stubborn weight, hormone chaos, gut issues, and declining performance. Using real data, functional lab testing, metabolism analysis, and simple daily habits that actually move the needle. Whether you're an endurance athlete, an executive, or simply committed to becoming your strongest future you, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Are you fit and healthy on the outside? How about on the inside? Today, I'm diving into hidden heart risks for aging endurance athletes. If you've been listening to my podcast since I started in 2012, well, you're amazing, but you will know my story. I went from the high-charging, competitive endurance athlete, fitness studio owner, trainer, and coach, and everything changed. Back in 2013, I was struck, I thought, with metabolic chaos, adrenal exhaustion, whatever you want to call it. And to me, as I've become that practitioner I was looking for back then in 2013, fast forward to when I'm recording this in January 2026, I have learned a lot. Just because we are successful, competitive athlete, and we feel strong, feel fit, or maybe cross the finish line in any event, endurance event, you're not necessarily healthy on the inside. And I think we've become stuck in this mindset that just because I exercise, I am healthy. And I try in the show to go down different rabbit holes twice a week with you to help share with you my thoughts, curiosities, and what I'm studying. And as I prepare for an interview coming up with a cardiologist, during the same time, ironically, I continue to hear about different friends struggling with AFib. Reading Mark Sisson's book, Born to Walk, and Brad Kearns about heart health and endurance athletes, listening to Peter Attia, hearing about different stories of ex-pro Ironman athletes that have had heart problems, and losing my own father from heart disease, as well as 10 years after that, he got kidney issues and cancer. It's all separate. Our body works together. And I want you to understand what you can do in middle age to be the best version of yourself in the future. Looking at how we want to live our life in retirement. Visualizing yourself 5, 10, 20 years from now, 30 years. Observing how your parents age and their friends age. Observing people in general at all ages as they become more addicted to using cell phone technology, computer time. So I want us to be health optimizers, to take ownership of our health in middle age, to create the ideal, optimal FutureYou Blueprint. And today we are taking one of those deep dives into something I feel is an area we all need to learn about, because there's so many myths about heart disease, high cholesterol, eating red meat causes heart attacks. I want you to know that you are an individual, tying in the role of genetics, our lifestyle habits, our stressors, our toxic environment. And so as you listen to this episode on a long walk, easy ride, or recovery day, or a road trip, This is not surface level health. It is not fear-based. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I'm just a curious individual. Maybe as some people call themselves, citizen scientist. I'm a health investigator. This is not about anti-exercise. I exercise. I had to stop doing competitive events as Ironman athlete or Ironman triathlons. I was not able to ever do another marathon, long distance event, half Ironman, half marathon since I had my health issues. So I'm trying to educate you as along the way I'm understanding what happened to me. Why did I have these health problems when other people did not? And that's why I always tie in genetics and testing and not guessing. I have friends that competed at a high level still to this day. When I stopped racing in 2013, they're still able to race and enjoy it. Maybe they do it every other year now. And maybe they're retired from their job and they're not doing too much of everything. But are we all doing the right things to be thriving when we're older and not struggling? And today we're diving into heart health. Are you fit and healthy on the inside and the outside? Most athletes can confidently answer the first part. The second part, that's where things get interesting and what I'm becoming more curious about, and then reflecting on what Phil Maffetone taught us 30 years ago. Being fit on the outside looks like lean body comp, high VO2 max, consistent training schedule. You're disciplined. You have great performance. Your metrics look great on the outside. And this is where people always thought myself, I was fit and healthy on the outside. But no one would have predicted what happened to me in 2013. Are you healthy on the inside? It looks to be what we need to investigate under the hood because we don't know what we don't know. We don't see these dysfunctions and imbalances at a cellular level. Do you have stable arteries? Do you have low inflammatory burden? Are you efficient fat oxidizer? Do you have a balanced nervous system? And that doesn't count just looking at your aura or Whoop band. Do you have resilient mitochondria? Do you have recovery that actually is restorative? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Fitness can hide dysfunction. Health reveals resiliency. And someone warned us about that, as I said, 30 years ago. Phil Maffetone, 3 decades or more ago, introduced a radical idea to the endurance culture. And he is one, as well as Mark Allen, that taught me endurance sports, but how to do it correctly. Even though I still had health problems, that's more my genetics. I want you to remember, Maffetone taught us you can be fit and unhealthy at the same time. Maffetone observed athletes who trained hard, raced often, looked incredibly fit, yet developed hormonal dysfunction, immune issues, chronic injuries, burnout, and later heart problems. His max aerobic function approach was not about slowing athletes down. It was about protecting long-term health by respecting their own unique physiology. Back then, we did not have the tools to fully prove what he was seeing. Now we do. Perhaps that's why Mark Allen is still thriving and he's the one that doesn't have all the heart problems that so many of these other athletes in his age group are having today. So let's be clear. This is not about anti-exercise. I exercise, as I said, every day. I'm very disciplined, but I changed my routine up to embrace the aging process. I want to talk about chronic stress physiology. Long-term endurance training, especially without adequate recovery, can create what I've talked about for years, based on my own knowledge from my own body, repeated cortisol and catecholamine spikes. Get a Dutch test. See what's going on under your hood to see your hormones. Chronic sympathetic nervous system dominance, elevated oxidative stress, constant vascular shear stress. And underfueling, especially common in us women, and even more so, 10, 15 years ago, when we were all about OMAD and fasted exercise. I myself was doing fasted exercise, teaching classes, doing my own workouts, 2 workouts a day, plus training my clients and teaching these group fitness classes. I was constantly moving and exercising, but I was also doing fasted. I thought, okay, I don't need to eat so much because I'm efficient at fat burning, but I still was low calories in. Not enough protein either. So on the outside, you may look amazing. On the inside, a different story may be unfolding that you have no idea about unless you run tests every, say, 3 to 6 months. Over time, this environment can lead to inflammation at the arterial wall, formation of soft and non-calcified plaque, electrical structural remodeling of your heart, and increase in AFib, arterial fibrillation. Yes, you can be lean, you can be strong, and you can be fast, but you can still be metabolically stressed at a cellular and vascular level. So this is why I started looking into this. Looking at people's blood chemistry panel and looking at what their doctors are telling them and more data. But putting the missing pieces of a health puzzle together and understanding the root cause, work backwards. And finding the right tests to do. What I'm going to be talking about in an upcoming podcast interview is soft plaque versus hard plaque. What really causes heart attacks? Listen to my interview with Dave Feldman. Most people think heart attacks happen because arteries slowly clogged. That is not what usually happens. Heart attacks most often occur because soft plaque ruptures. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an exercise physiologist, I'm not an expert in any of this, I'm just a curious citizen researcher, a health investigator, practitioner that's looking at clues. So if we have hard calcified plaque identified in the right test, this is showing plaque that's stable, and it represents older but healed inflammation. And hard plaque is what calcium scores are detecting. But what I'm learning about as I get older and seeing this in my clients and friends and family, what we're not looking at is what we want to know. Soft, non-calcified plaque is lipid-rich, inflammatory, unstable, and often invisible to standard tests. So why do we just get told to do calcium scores? It's just looking at hard plaque. But the soft plaque is the unstable plaque. Soft plaque lives inside the artery wall, and it can rupture suddenly and form a clot. This is why so many athletes are told your stress test was normal. Your cholesterol panel looks great. Your calcium score is 0, until one day it is not. But what are we looking at? Doctors still to this day are treating people with cholesterol, saying you're high cholesterol, you need to be on lipid blocker statin drugs. A standard lipid panel only tells us how much cholesterol is being carried. It does not tell us how many particles are carrying it. How damaging are those particles? So what we want to look at is APOB, the LDL particle number. Each particle is one opportunity to damage the artery wall. So the lower your APOB number, the better you are. Think of it as traffic. One truck is carrying a lot of cargo as compared to hundreds of small cars carrying a little bit of cargo. We have the same load of cholesterol, but very different collision risk. One truck versus hundreds of small cars. LDL particle size. We want to look at large, buoyant LDL. That's less harmful as compared to how much small, dense LDL do you have on board. The small, dense LDL particle type is inflammatory, and it easily penetrates the artery wall. Small, dense LDL behaves as BB pellets not beach balls. An endurance athlete often shows normal LDL-C, elevated particle number, smaller, denser particles, and false reassurance from these so-called great labs from your doctor. Especially with high training volume, high carbohydrate intake, chronic stress, insulin resistance masked by leanness. So we want to look at functional lab testing as risk potential, but not as a diagnosis. There are lab packages you can get, as from Function Health, Dr. Hyman's program. They'll give you markers as ApoB, LDL particle size, Lp(a), and triglyceride patterns. But this only helps us understand why plaque may form, who is genetically more vulnerable, and how stress and fueling can influence our risk. But remember, labs show risk potential. They do not show the actual disease. And here's where the company I'm interviewing, one of the co-founder doctors from Clear Cardio. And I'm just preparing for the interview and wanted to do this recording. They are using a high-resolution cardiac CT angiography. This is an FDA-cleared AI plaque and analysis, and they can quantify total plaque burden and tell you how much soft plaque do you have versus hard plaque. And they can identify rupture-prone regions, and they can track progression or regression over time. So they're not asking, is your artery blocked? They're asking, is your plaque stable or is it ready to rupture? And this is a distinction that I believe can save more lives. This is data interpreted by experts, as the doctor I'm interviewing, Dr. John Osborne. He's trained in lipidology, hypertension, plaque biology, and advanced CT imaging. Now, before we go further, I want to pause for a moment and talk about something I personally use and recommend, especially for my endurance athletes and high performers who are living in chronically stressed nervous system state. Sympathetic dominance. It's a thing. It's real. And what I've been using is called Pulsetto. This is one of the most overlooked drivers of heart disease. Plaque instability, AFib risk, is low vagal tone. Your body's ability to shift out of fight or flight and into true recovery. Pulsetto is a non-invasive vagus nerve stimulation device that can help calm your nervous system, which will help improve heart rate variability and support your recovery and your quality sleep, but also reduce your stress reactivity, how you react to those daily stressors. You can train perfectly, but if your nervous system never downshifts and you're always in overdrive, your body will never truly repair. And so I've been using Pulsetto as a part of my own daily nervous system hygiene routine, especially after my workouts, when I'm traveling, before I eat, or on high stress days. So check out my link below. You can use my code Coach Debbie Potts. Head to Pulsetto, Pulsetto, and check their website out. And their devices are very affordable. But until then, let me know how you're using heart variability training to improve your vagus nerve. But let's get back to the episode, because I think you'll find this interesting. Peter Attia has taught us a lot. And I'm doing Pinoe metabolism testing and looking at Peter Attia's information, listening to his episodes on VO2 max and how we need to be improving our fat oxidation levels. But then also looking at what Mark Sisson's talking about, the peak fat max, and how we need to stay below that. And then listening to Dr. Stacy Sims on how we need to do zone 2 or peak fat max and sprint interval training. Basically, I'm finding everyone saying avoid the middle in between zones, right? Stop doing these workouts that I've been saying for years working out too hard of intensity to be that zone 2 or peak fat max. And people are doing their interval training too easy of intensity to be really called interval training. And often I see clients that I'm doing metabolism testing say they're doing interval training, but really they're not bringing the heart rate all the way down and back up. They're just staying basically all the workouts in zone 3. So when we're looking at what to do, testing instead of guessing, getting, I feel, a metabolism test as I do with PNOE, P-N-O-E, getting the right plaque analysis with a cardiac CT angiography, and identifying the right functional lab testing, getting the right data to figure out your FutureYou Blueprint. But Peter Attia has talked a lot, I think the most recently, bringing VO2 max to the front of the media, forefront, as the strongest predictor of longevity. And I agree, it matters, but I think we need to look at it for athletes. VO2 max measures your capacity, but it does not measure what we're talking about, the arterial health. So all these tests together give us the right information, and no one's hopefully not saying just do this and nothing else. Because you can have elite levels of VO2 max, incredible endurance, great performance, but remember, you can still have that soft plaque and inflammatory lipid particles and structural risk. And remember, you train the engine, but this does not mean that the fuel lines are clear. And Mark Sisson and Brad Kearns talking about Born to Walk, talking about the movement is a big missing piece. And Mark talks about humans are evolved to walk a lot, or rather, I think, move throughout the day, to sprint occasionally, lift heavy things, and recover deeply. We're not to train moderately hard as zone 3 every day for decades. And that's what so many of us athletes have done. Walking improves your vagal tone, lowers inflammation, supports lipid metabolism, and helps stabilize your plaque. But what we're missing is walking is only protective if it is done at the right intensity for your metabolism. So this is why I'm a big fan. Obviously, I bought the equipment and pay a big monthly fee for it. PNOE metabolism testing to do a correct test, as Bob Seibehor taught us how to do your metabolic crossover point and a true fat max test. And that not doing this generic zone 2 training. When people say, oh, I do zone 2, you do not know what your zone 2 is unless you've done a testing. When we do metabolism testing to identify your true fat max, this is the exact heart rate where your heart cells, or your cells, not your heart cells, where your cells burn the highest percentage of fat. So the heart rate where your cells burn the highest percentage of fat. It's not measured, it's not guessed. I mean, gosh, I cannot talk today. It's measured, it's not guessed. So I always say test and not guess. Use science, not math. Many endurance athletes discover that their easy pace is carb dominant, that they're training in a stress-driven zone. And they're reinforcing the same patterns that drive plaque formation. At a cellular level, true fat max training improves mitochondria efficiency, reduces oxidative stress, lowers lactate accumulation, improves insulin sensitivity, and shifts autonomic balance towards your parasympathetic dominance. So this directly impacts your plaque stability, lipid particle remodeling, AFib risk, and long-term health. So this is why I like to retest my clients every 90 days, because your mitochondria start to adapt. And if you train and fuel properly and follow the holistic method lifestyle habits, you're going to see your fat max improve. Fat oxidation increases, and that fat max heart rate will shift to the right. If you don't retest, you undertrain and you can stall. Or you might overtrain and recreate more stress. So retesting allows us to course correct, have progressive training with protection, and expand fat burning capacity, preserve your performance, and most importantly, longevity. So when I look at my own case study, as I like to do every few months and need to do it more consistently, doing the GI map and organic acids tests and genetics, pulling up all those reports together. Because when I go back to my 2013 labs and fast forward to 2026 and analyze my own history, I looked low risk. I have decades of endurance training. I qualified for Boston Marathon many times, Ironman World Championship qualifier. But when I look deeper, and I've been diving deep into this and sharing this in other videos, my genetics predispose me to oxidative stress. I have stress-sensitive neurotransmitter pathways. I have fat max lower than expected. I have sympathetic dominance masked by fitness. I wasn't sick, but I was exactly the athlete who should not rely on reassurance. That's when everything shifted from training to races to training for structure, stability, and longevity. And until last year, 2025, April, I did the mitochondria me screen test. And then I just did GI map that last November. And then I went back in time and put this all together. Oxidative stress, damage to my cell membrane. No one ever looked at that for over 10 years. I've been struggling to get my health back. So say 13 years. Now I'm finally able to get the right labs and the right correlation to my genetics, what I need to do for my FutureYou Blueprint. So here's what I want to leave you with. Performance protects your ego. Your data protects your longevity. Remember, you trained your engine. Now inspect the fuel lines. True longevity performance requires advanced lipid testing, structural imaging. At a cellular level, we want to look at the whole picture. Metabolic testing, smart training, strategic recovery, not assuming, not using outdated tests and outdated lab results, not waiting for symptoms to happen. So if you're over 40, you're training hard, you're training and racing, or maybe just training for life. If heart disease runs in your family, as myself, or if something just feels slightly off, you're very in tune, use your intuition. This conversation is for you. So in upcoming episodes, I will be sitting down with doctors to help prevent cardiology or heart health events. Speaking with cardiologists to help us understand advanced cardiac imaging, metabolic testing for longevity, how to train for life, not just your next race, and how to prevent heart events before they happen is even more important. So looking at metabolism testing, looking at VO2 max versus fat oxidation and mitochondria health, I think that is good information to start with. Find someone that can do a test near you, and let's look at the data. Make sure you do proper warm-up. Listen to my other episode with Daniel Crumbach, how to do a proper metabolism test. Most endurance athletes were taught to chase VO2 max. Yes, that matters. Cardiorespiratory capacity, your oxygen delivery, performance potential. But VO2 max does not tell us how efficiently your body is making energy. And this is where metabolism testing as PNOE can help change the game. Because when we are measuring your VO2 max or VO2 peak, that's your capacity. But what about your fat oxidation rate, your fat max heart rate, fuel usage across intensities, and where stress metabolism takes over? Think of it this way. Your VO2 max tells you how big your engine is. Fat oxidation tells you how cleanly and efficiently it runs. So fat max is intensity where you are burning the absolutely highest amount of fat, where the mitochondria are the most efficient, where lactate levels stay low, cortisol output is minimized. It's not the same as saying the generic zone 2 that I keep hearing people say there. I'm training in zone 2, and my Apple Watch told me that, or my Garmin. That's an age-predicted heart rate or watch-based formula. Fat max is individual. Two athletes can have the same VO2 max, the same pace, and the same heart rate, but widely different fuel usage. That is why guessing your zones often leads to training too hard on your easy recovery days. your chronic carbohydrate dependence, your excessive sympathetic stress load, impairment in your recovery, and increased cardiovascular strain over time. So long before metabolic carts were common, Mark Sisson and Phil Maffetone, Mark Allen, they taught us building aerobic efficiency first, training where fat oxidation dominates, avoiding chronic, moderate, hard intensity, use short, strategic intensity, but not endless grinding workouts. And in the book, Born to Walk and Primal Endurance book, Mark Sisson wrote, and Brad Kearns co-authored those books. If you can't burn fat efficiently at low intensities, high intensity will eventually break you down. Peak fat max is the foundation and performance is layered on top. If we do testing as I do, Pinoy metabolism testing gives us the precision of what Sisson taught us and Maffetone has taught us. Now we hear from Dr. Stacy Sims. For women and aging athletes, female athletes, she's been very clear on this. Women do not benefit from endless moderate intensity endurance the same way men do. Stacy Sims, who was top podcast last year of 2025, her recommendations aligns beautifully with metabolic testing. Train at your true fat max, not too hard. Support mitochondria function. We want to preserve glycogen. We're minimizing that cortisol load. We are improving metabolic flexibility and protecting hormones and heart health. Then we add in short, high-intensity sprints, with most people, I guarantee you, are not going hard enough. They're hard. They're very brief, 10 to 30 seconds, all out, top heart rate that you can, zone 5. And full recovery, twice as long or more, to zone 1 between those efforts. Minimal volume. It gives you high neuromuscular and hormonal signals. Why does she recommend sprints? Because it improves insulin sensitivity, preserves type 2 muscle fibers that we get less of as we age, improves VO2 kinetics, increases power without the chronic stress. And for us females, lowering hormones, sprint interval training supports bone density and longevity. This is not hit every day. You need to use it strategically, say twice a week. And here, how this comes together. Smart metabolic training. The integrated model that I like to use. Most training at true fat max, what that is for you as a unique individual. We're training below your stress thresholds, getting more that peak fat max training zone, true fat max that's more parasympathetic supportive. And mitochondria are more protective, and your heart. With a small dose of intensity of short sprints fully recovered. So you're doing 30-second sprint, 2 minutes or longer. I had someone take 10 minutes to get their heart rate down to zone 1, but that's where you need to start. It just gets better if you do it right. So it's quality and low volume. Neurological benefits, hormone benefits. What we want to avoid, Stacy Sims talks about, is chronic, moderate, hard training. And that's what Mark Sisson does. That's what Maffetone told us years ago. Living just around fat max. Always carb dominant work is what you want to avoid. And avoid, but I said wrong. It's not, you want to exercise around your fat max, but not just always right above it. That's the error. We want to stay around there. And did you know when we do your zoning from the metabolism test, your zone 2, the bottom of zone 2 is your peak fat max. The top of zone 2 is your metabolic crossover point. So I want you to stay the top of zone 1. That's the bottom of zone 2. So staying above there instead of even middle zone 2. So when we're talking about your fat max, not quite the same as your zone 2. So if you want to improve VO2 max without breaking the heart, increase fat oxidation without messing up your hormones, train for longevity, not just your races this year. This is a small dose of intensity with the most of your training around true fat max combined with mobility training, stability, flexibility, and of course, strength. So why does this matter for heart health? Cardiovascular, from that lens, true fat max can reduce oxidative stress. And this is where my genetics gave me a big red flag. Lowers inflammatory signaling, improves lipid particle behavior, stabilizes plaque, improves autonomic balance. And when sprints are done correctly, they can improve vascular function, insulin sensitivity, preserve your muscles, help improve power and more resilience as we get older, if done correctly. Maybe twice a week, max 3 times a week with 2 days recovery in between. Sprint means 10 to 20, 30 seconds all out. 10 to 30 seconds. And then recovery is at least 2 minutes. All right? So if you're not doing that, you're doing a tempo workout. VO2 max tells us how big your engine is. When we do Pinoe metabolism testing, that tells me how cleanly your engine is running. If we do not build your peak fat max first, performance eventually becomes cardiovascular stress. So if you're an endurance athlete, high performing, driven, ambitious, 40 plus, male or female, we don't need more miles, more grinding, more intensity. We need more measurement of our metabolism. True fat max training, strategically place sprint intervals with proper recovery to adapt. Longevity performance is built in the mitochondria, not your mileage log. So understand how your body works at a cellular level and what changes as we get older, and focusing on your area of opportunity and order of operations, phases, and work on that foundation first. So remember, when you train at your true fat max intensity, where your body burns the highest absolute amount of fat, you're not just going easy. You're sending very specific biological signals to your cells to improve your mitochondria efficiency. Your mitochondria prefer oxidized fatty acids instead of rapid glycolysis, carbohydrates versus fat. When we use fat for fuel, we have more ATP produced per unit of oxygen. We have less metabolic waste and greater energy efficiency. So efficient mitochondria require less stress signaling to meet energy demands, which is critical for long-term heart health. And we're also reducing oxidative stress. High intensity or poorly targeted training increases reactive oxygen species. If we do true fat max training, we are lowering excessive ROS production, improving our antioxidant balance, reducing damage to mitochondria cell membranes. And this matters because oxidative stress destabilizes arterial plaque and damages those endothelial cells. Check your oxidative stress markers. And so I could go on of the other benefits of fat max training: lowers lactate accumulation, improves insulin sensitivity, shifts the nervous system towards parasympathetic dominance. And all this matters for heart health because these cellular effects do not stay in the muscle, they cascade into cardiovascular protection. So plaque stability gives lower inflammation, less oxidative damage, thicker, more stable fibrous caps. Stable plaque is far less likely to rupture. Lipid particle remodeling, we have fewer small dense LDL particles, lower ApoB burden, and improved HDL function. This can help shift your cholesterol from dangerous traffic to low risk transport. And then we look at reduction in your AFib risk, less sympathetic dominance, lower arterial irritation, better electrical stability, and improved vagal tone. And this is why so many endurance athletes feel better, even not more fit, when they're training at the true fat max and strengthening that vagus nerve. So if you want long-term heart health, get more around the true fat max. Endothelial health will be improved, mitochondrial resiliency, metabolic flexibility, nervous system balance. This isn't about slowing down. And this is something I've been talking about since I did new leaf testing back in 2005 and started learning from Maffetone back in 2001, 25 years ago. This is not about slowing down. It's about training in a way your heart can sustain for decades. True fat max training is not about burning more calories. It's about reducing cellular stress. And when cells are less stressed, arteries stabilize, your lipids will improve, and your heart becomes more resilient. So thanks for listening. If you want to learn more, send me a link. 3x4 Genetics is a new report I'm looking at to put this together. And if we can get the right labs and the right angiogram to look at the plaque, I think that would be huge to create that FutureYou Blueprint. Of course, with your canoeing metabolism testing, ideally with me in Solana Beach, California, every 3 months. I think we need to look at all of it together. Canoeing metabolism testing, genetic report, correlate and collect clues with your functional lab testing and getting plaque tested. And the 3x4 model, I'm just studying their practitioner program. It's how genetics and labs and imaging can tell us the whole heart story. Think of heart disease as these 3 biological systems, each influenced by 4 genetic pathways. And I'll just wrap this up for another episode, but genetics load the gun. Lifestyle and training pull the trigger. Your labs are showing us risk potential, and plaque imaging shows what's actually happening. So we look at different buckets, lipid transport and particle burden, look at the labs as APOB, the LDL particle size, LP little a, triglycerides, and then looking at the plaque, soft plaque versus hard plaque. Plaque is invisible to stress tests and the calcium scores. And I'm just learning that based on my prep for this podcast. And I just think it's so alarming that all these people that have had heart disease and AFib and heart problems, none of us are getting these stress tests. So why are we waiting until we're having heart issues? Let us that are high performers, endurance athletes, been racing for years, we are actually more susceptible to this stress on our heart. Inflammation, oxidative stress, plaque stability. Why plaque becomes dangerous. So looking at your genetics as myself, because I have a lot of bad genetics. My sister doesn't know hers. She's never been tested. So she's not taking action on certain things because you don't know what you don't know. My mom, my dad, they didn't ever get genetics testing. But what if I can get that information now and figure out what these genetic variants mean? I have higher inflammatory response to stress. I have less antioxidant buffering, and I have greater endothelial damage during endurance training. Even though I did well and succeeded doing endurance sports, and I felt great, I had a huge true fat burning range, but the training volume became inflammatory load if the recovery metabolism might not be matched. And all my markers look fine or good. But that's why I want to get my plaque tested and find out what the heck, because I just found out my mitochondria have oxidative stress damage to them. So under what genes influence your nervous system and your heart? SCOMT, MAO, MAOB, all these different variants. Slower clearance of adrenaline, prolonged sympathetic activation, higher heart rate, reactivity, reduced nitric oxide availability. For me, I might not tolerate stress as well. You do well until you don't. And looking at the labs and the metrics, getting these clues to put your missing pieces of your health puzzle together so we can create the FutureYou Blueprint. I don't know about you, but when we retire, we're going to be living in Europe for a few months a year, renting a place in different places and riding our bikes, swimming in the ocean, hiking. Maybe not running too long, maybe 30-minute runs, but I want to be doing all of this when I retire and thriving. So looking at clues now. Do you have elevated resting heart rate over time? Do you have a lower heart rate variability? Do you have disruption in your sleep? What's your cortisol patterns looking like? Do you have high training load with poor recovery? These are often dismissed as just athlete things. But looking at your plaque and your rhythm, chronic sympathetic dominance can lead to arterial irritation, cardiac remodeling, electrical instability, increased AFib risk. And this often coexists with soft plaque, metabolic stress, and inflammation. So remember, labs tell you who is vulnerable. The imaging tells you who is already affected. We can get the functional labs to show risk potential, genetic expression, metabolic stress signals. The clear cardio imaging type of test can show total plaque burden, your soft versus hard plaque, your plaque stability, real-time disease presence. And remember that endurance athlete trap, high VO2 max, lean body. You look good on the outside. Your labs are normal. They're not optimal. Normal is not good. Underneath, you can have a high APOB, small dense LDL, inflammation under load, sympathetic dominance, and soft plaque formation. Fitness masks the risk, and the data reveals the truth. So remember, heart disease risk in athletes isn't random. It's the intersection of these genetics, metabolic stress, and years of training load. The labs show risk potential, but plaque imaging is showing reality. So let's reframe the FutureYou Blueprint. True longevity performance is going to require you to get awareness of your genetics, advanced lipid testing, metabolic testing to identify that fat max, regulation of your nervous system, structural imaging. Don't have fear. You're not guessing. You're not waiting for problems, just better questions and better data. So thank you for listening, and let's listen in to the upcoming podcast interview with Clear Cardio to learn more. And then go back and listen to Dave Feldman and their team's research on their study of hyper responders. Thanks for listening and taking ownership of your future self today. Share this with someone else who may be curious about what they need to do to be their best self in the future.
Thanks for listening to the Coach Debbie Pod Show. If today's episode sparked a light bulb moment, that's your sign to stop guessing and start building your personalized FutureYou Blueprint. You can learn more or book a discovery call at www.debbiepotts.net. Be sure to follow the show on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Coach Debbie Potts. 2 T's. If this episode helped you, please subscribe, rate, and review. It's how we help more people age with strength, energy, and clarity. Until next time, remember, age is inevitable. How you age is not.